right, everybody can hear us, so I will kick it off. I am Bill Perkins. We have Scott Shepard who's moderating because, I would mess things up. And Scott is also who put out the, helped put out the emails and get you guys together. So I want to thank Scott. I want to thank Dr. Chris Renna, the famous Dr. Chris Renna. He's the person who, if you bought the book and read the book, there's a story about how, as part of the psychological evaluation, Dr. Renna was asking me, do I fear running out of money? And I said, I hope so. And I went into the spiel, which is now kind of the book, about how I want to spend all my money before I die, and these are the reasons why, and I'm trying to develop an app to guide me. And Dr. Renna encouraged me to make a book, write a book about this. Here's some authors, write a book about it. You need to get your message out. And I've been blathering about it for years and talking about this app, et cetera, and that was finally the last straw that broke the camel's back to get me to write the book. So Dr. Renna, as I describe in the book, is one of those fancy doctors, but that tries and keep people like me who want to live forever. We're probably not going to make it, and also have a high quality of life. So, Dr. Renna, thank you for taking your time to come talk and speak with us and answer questions. He's at Lifespan Medicine, and the first thing I want to ask you for the audience is, could you describe Lifespan and how is it different from other doctors' offices' medical approach, their relationship with the clients, their approach to health and healthy living?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it. Scott, thanks for making it as easy as you did. Lifespan began in 1990 after I had practiced almost a decade in a conventional medical setting where the patient-physician relationship is ruled mostly by the physician's authority and the patient takes a subordinate position. My observation in the 1980s about how medicine was practiced was that we were not getting anybody any healthier. And in fact, my patients' diseases were my annuity. And in that subordinate relationship, they really didn't have any power. So I started Lifespan with a concept of the early detection of a disease would mandate prevention. In other words, I would get you to change your habits once I told you, hey, you're going to be a diabetic. And the concept on which I would base the practice would be that I would call patients clients to remind me every time I referred to them that I work for them. And that they not only have equal footing in this relationship in a partnership or collaboration to preserve their health, but they're actually the dominant factor. So that there are two rules at Lifespan from its establishment. One is everything that we do has to be on the client's behalf. And the other is that we have to get them healthier. We can't just use the low-hanging fruit of their diseases or disorders to manage them through our relationship. We've got to do something to help change their lives and make them healthier. It took about 5 years to put the program together, but I started in about 85 or 86, and I opened Lifespan in about 1990.
You for doing that. And one of the things I'm going to ask, I have a couple questions. One of the questions is that the patients come to you, right? And they have something that they want, right? And generally it's more life and a healthier life, right? What is kind of the biggest difficulty you have in getting people to change habits, or what is the most common thing, what is your obstacles that you have with your patients?
Sure. I think that each client is different and their obstacles, are nuanced into their own individual personalities. But it's the most difficult thing is to get an individual to realize that his or her habits are as ingrained as they actually are. Getting them to change what they eat for breakfast can sometimes be a real challenge for a person who could otherwise, build $1 billion company or rule the world. Just getting them to realize, okay, if I want changes in my body, the way I feel, if I want changes in my future, I'm going to have to change my breakfast. And starting with simple things, or I'm going to have to drink 2 glasses of wine instead of 3 glasses of wine, or whatever that subtle habit is. that's contributing to the processes that are taking them down. So it's
Right.
really first getting them to believe that they can accomplish it. Secondly, seeing the obstacles in their subtle and ingrained behaviors. And third, getting them to adopt these new behaviors so that they'll see purposeful change.
On that note, what would you say with your older clients? What would you say their top regret is about their health that they wish they could tell their younger selves?
Clearly that they started sooner. Meaning I've had patients the entire time. I still have retained some of my initial clients from the early 1990s. So I've walked them through the last 30 years. But if I get a 67-year-old fellow who just sold his company, or even a 54-year-old fellow who just sold his company, he's now achieved his either first, second, third, or most momentous milestone in his life. And he's thinking about, okay, I now have the money to fund life for a lot longer than I'm going to be around. What do I need to do? And more or less the regret is, I should have done this 5 years ago. I should have done this 20 years ago.
That's interesting, because I've heard someone just say they read a book where someone recommends spending 10% of your earnings on your health. Now that could be gym or doctor visits or whatever it is, but that how important it is in terms of maintenance. So starting earlier, waiting till you make the money, then go work on your health doesn't seem like the optimal solution, if you ask me. I have some questions over here. If you had one message you could get out, right? Simple, that everybody, you had a giant billboard that everybody saw from space, what would be on that message with respect to health?
Find out. That would be my billboard. Find out. One of the interesting things about your book, Bill, is that for you to write your book, for you to form your concept, you would have to have acknowledged and somehow gotten comfortable, uniquely comfortable with your mortality. And it's interesting, when we think about mortality, we think about it intellectually, and we all understand what it is, and it's an accepted concept intellectually. But when you get into the emotions or the thoughts, the deeper thoughts about your own mortality, you find a lot of, say, immature concepts and resistances. And part of the resistance factors into, I'm okay and I don't need to find out if there's anything wrong with me. I don't want any bad news. I'm doing fine. This is, I'm with the experts here because I've made a contribution to the medical school, because my father has a name on one of the buildings. They're going to take care of me. And they'll tell me everything I need to know. I don't need to know anything else about myself that I don't already know. And I just go in once a year for that executive physical, and they tell me everything I need to, that's wrong. That's absolute nonsense. We're dying every day, and our decisions take us one step closer to the grave or further from the grave every time we make one.
Right.
What I'm drinking in this mug, or what you guys ate earlier this morning, has moved you in one direction or another on the aging spectrum. And one of the things I'd like to talk about if we get to the subject is last year was a banner year for the anti-aging concept because it was confirmed at the highest levels of science through some very sophisticated publications. And I will tell you that it's been established now in science that aging can be measured. In other words, we can measure your biological age. We know how old you are chronologically, but we don't know how old an individual is biologically unless we measure it. And once measured, it can be mitigated. You can get younger. Well, that's kind of a common sense thing, but it was never proved before last year in science that anybody could get any younger. We were hopeful and we were observant, and we thought, oh, sure, like I can get younger. If I just stop eating, drinking, and smoking, I'm going to get younger. Well, yeah, you are. But we were never able to measure that before. And last year we got the tools necessary to do so.
That's great.
So
I mean,
my billboard would be find out, like look into it, pay some attention to it.
right. I mean, one of my favorite things is why guess when we can know? And I've heard from various people, doctors, people like yourself, catching something early is like what changes the odds of whether you're going to die or be have a lower quality life or be disabled. And so it makes sense to come in frequently, get all the diagnostics you can. And as I got wealthier, I was like, every time you recommend a diagnostic, I'm like, of course, why not? Why guess when I can know? I have the money to do it, et cetera. Now, one of the things that also amazed me is I would say that above the fancy diagnostics that I'm paying for, trying to put, colon cancer, these exams, things that, you should be doing, going to the dentist, a lot of the stuff is very basic and habit forming. Like you said in the beginning, about, before the sleep thing came out, you were like, sleep is very important. One of the questions you asked me was like, how many hours of sleep am I getting, et cetera. But most of the time we spend together, it seems like you're getting as much information possible about my life, from my psychology to my habits, in order to get the diagnostics right. Would you agree with that? That's basically a follow-up to what you're saying, right?
Exactly. The relationship that most of the participants in this talk have with their doctor right now, if they have a relationship, is pretty much defined by the doctor's training. And when you go to medical school, you're taught that you have to get two things right. And that if you get these two things right, you're pretty much in the clear. Even if you make some other mistakes, you got to get these two right. And the first thing is, what's the diagnosis? You got to be able to name what's wrong with the person. And the second thing is, you need to know the therapeutic. Like, what do you do about this? If a person has condition A, B, or C, what do you do in the next steps, or what do you ultimately do? So medical education and training, which is shaped by the testing process that we all go through, makes us 3 to 5 minute thinkers. And it imbues in us this idea that if we get the diagnosis right and we know the right therapeutic, we've done our job and you're now taken care of. And I can move on to the next problem or the next person. Like, I don't need to spend much more time with you because I've already told you what you have and what to do about it. So I'm out of here. My usefulness is up. And the economics of that, game of name that disease, know that therapeutic, work very well in the physician's favor. Physicians, as you probably know, are not wealthy people. They're upper middle class people, but they have a secure position in that upper middle class by having a low to mid figure income. And that's secured by the number of people that they can see. It's the same thing as how many widgets can a manufacturer produce, how many patients can a doctor see, and that's the paradigm. What I'm describing is your relationship with your doctor. If he's a nice guy or a nice woman and you like them and you're comfortable with them, that's great. I'm sure there's a lot of transference that you're putting into that because people are usually afraid or intimidated when they go to the doctor, or annoyed. Right. The whole process of seeing a doctor is pretty annoying. But they then transfer an abundance of confidence in the person when they come in, even if that person is completely disengaged from that process. What I'm saying is that each of your viewers, each of your readers, for them to do something about the aging process, for them to do something about their health, even getting the right diagnostics and thorough evaluations, they need to look for doctors who are not necessarily practicing in that paradigm of, look, I've got about 5 more minutes for you and then I got to go. And I practiced in that paradigm for 10 years, so I realized the economic and business pressures that are put upon a doctor in that circumstance. I'm not a medical heretic, and I'm not condemning all of my, colleagues. I'm just saying what it is. And the healthcare system in the United States is neither about health nor care. And you've got to find someone in your community or outside your community, now that we see that telemedicine works pretty efficiently, who is practicing outside that paradigm, who is going to take a deeper interest and concern and ask those questions that explore, who is this guy, who is this woman, and what is their life really leading them to? What realizations do they have and how are they motivated? You've got to find somebody who is willing to go that deep with you in order to help you guide your behaviors into a healthier outcome.
Yeah, and I, for people who've read the book or know the book, one of the reasons why like health, it's not a health book, but health is such a big, and actually since there's so many books about health, I consciously didn't put that many pages towards it, except for that your experience, your enjoyment of life is the biggest determinant of whether you're going to enjoy that experience or not, is how healthy you are. How much value you're going to get out of a certain experience, how mentally healthy you are, your physically, your lung capacity, et cetera. And I use examples. I use, the book is written kind of in stories, but, I tell people when I walk around Paris, a couple of years ago, I used to walk around Paris 12 miles a day, no problem, with a backpack on my back, right? I used to go to leisure learning class, walk around the city, see the cafes. It was fantastic. And now I'm not walking 12 miles around Paris. So Paris is a different Paris. It has a different value proposition for me, right? And I tell my friends who are overweight, I'm like, look, 5 extra pounds on your body is something like, I think it's 35 pounds of force on your knees for every step. And then it starts breaking your cartilage. Then when your knees hurt and you can't walk, everything becomes less enjoyable. It doesn't mean that it doesn't even mean that like you can't do it. Because a lot of people think, oh, I'll still be able to do this, or I'll still be able to do that. It just means that you're going to get less value, less happiness points, experience points, whatever you want to call it, as your health declines. And at a certain point, your health declines to a point where you just can't even do the activity anymore, and it's just off the board, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why, for me, I mean, health is important for many, many reasons, whatever. But for me, from like a quantifying my life and saying, how do I get the most fulfilling ride? How do I get the most, I call them experience points out of it, right? And experience points are basically, activity times health, right?
Yeah.
And since your health is declining, those activities lose the product of that, you get less points, right? And to the extent where you don't get them when either you die or you reach a phase where you can't do it anymore. Like my football playing days, which I say often, they're done. I am not playing football. I am not pulling a hamstring, twisted a knee. My back is, the cartilage is deteriorated. You're familiar with my cartilage, Dr. Renna. It's too risky. It's just not worth it. The memories of playing football, they're much, much, much greater than me playing football right now. And I think, as I said, when we had that conversation, like at a certain point, the memories of activities become greater than actually doing those activities, depending on where you are on your biological age. And that even happens with sex, One day the memory of having sex will be greater than any sexual activity you will be doing, but obviously we want to stay healthy and prolong that, right? Because it's such an enjoyable activity and foundational to our existence, I think, intelligent beings. I got a question here is, what is one of the best or most worthwhile investments you've ever made? And it could be money, health, time, whatever.
Oh yeah, I think, I'm in a service business, and so the answer is hands down other people. So the best investment that I've ever made is in other people. And what I mean by that is people usually associate lifespan with me as interchangeable. But lifespan is a team of people, a group of people who come together to provide amazing services in the healthcare sector. So I think the best investment that I've ever made is in other people. But I think now I see the depth of your question. You're talking about me personally, because the book does get very personal. Again, hands down, the best investment I've ever made have been well-planned travel excursions that open my eyes, my mind, and my heart to things that I was oblivious to in my day-to-day routines. So, if I list the top 10, it's usually destination travel. I'm a family guy. Some people are not, and I understand. Everybody has to create their relationships and their circumstances to help them feel their best. So for me, it was being with my nuclear family in places that, again, just changed the way we viewed life. And that's what your book is all about. It's about enjoying Paris in your 20s, enjoying Paris in your 30s, enjoying Paris in your 40s, but doing it differently because of the physiological or biological confinements that you incur. When I was in my 20s, I would never have spent much time in museums. When I was in my 30s, I wouldn't spend nearly as much time as I did when I was in my 40s. And it was probably because of that, 12-mile, 8-mile, 6-mile walking capability or walking comfort. So I think best investments in terms of business, you need to invest in other people. You need to have as one of your goals, making the people with whom you work better and making sure that they have a better life so that you will be able to enjoy that added benefit. And then personally, to me, it's all about experience. And for me, it's about experiences that are mind-changing. Experiences, a well-curated trip to Chin Lee in the Navajo Reservation, or a well-curated trip to the southern peninsula of Thailand, or a well-curated trip to Botswana. It's not likely that I'm going to spend time on the Chin Lee Reservation or in any of those 2 international destinations and not really be impacted by that experience, because it will be very different. And I think each of us who travel probably experience that. And then getting back to what you said in the beginning, if you're not feeling well, I've been in wonderful destinations and not been well. And that was a whole other experience. All I experienced there was how badly I felt. So step 1, get as healthy as you can. Step 2, plan, curate your experiences. And step 3, take them and take as many of them as you can.
Yeah, I always say romance is planning, and in many ways, this book is a planning book, right? It's a modeling book. It's like, hey, let's look at our lives right now, okay, to the grave, and let's get off autopilot and let's identify the experiences we want to have, and then once we've identified these experiences to have, we also have to know when we're going to have these experiences and put them in the right spot based on our abilities, our health, et cetera, and the resources we have. And so that way, that planning, when you say well-curated trip, I'm thinking in a broader sense, the well-curated trip of your life, right? Because the destination is the grave. We know where we're all going, right? We're going to the grave, right? So,
right.
So the well-curated trip is enjoying the ride, right? And planning it out and having the activities at the proper time, as close to the optimal time as possible, and to pack them all in. Many people heard me say this before. Life is like Tetris. You got to get the order right in order to get the high score, and so that's that. But this question is,
Bill, real quick.
Yeah.
We have like 7 good questions that have come in, and so what I'm thinking is, why don't we? And one of them just asked a question that relates exactly to what you guys were just talking about.
Okay.
So I'm thinking, let's try to transition into taking some of these Q&A questions.
Got it. I'm so silly. I didn't even see the questions popping up. I would have brought these in. Thank you.
So, and I'm going to try to click, I'm going to click on the most recent one from Omar, and I'm going to click answer live. We'll see what happens. It's just kind of trial by fire here. So let's see this. Okay. So question from Omar is, how do you factor in wealth and time? For instance, like, what good is $1 billion if you're 105 years old? And, this is really what your book is entirely about and goes into like extreme detail on. But maybe if you could give your answer, then maybe Dr. Renna could give his answer on, what he's seen people do for like the best way to factor in wealth and time, and really their money and runway and all of that. Yeah.
I'll give my answer. I'll try and shorten a version of it in the book. Is basically, if you have $105 billion when you're 105, and I'm going to say biologically 105. So like you have a probably 99% probability of dying within next year, right? Renna can tell you the exact stats. Then you've done it wrong. You've made a mistake. You should have never gotten to that point unless you just won a lottery, $105 billion lottery ticket. And what that means is that you will not be able to efficiently convert that money into experiences in order to enjoy it at that time. You should have been converting that money into experiences at an earlier biological age in order to get the most out of life. And or you should have been converting that money into experiences, the experiences of giving or charities that would have an impact that exceeds the return on any type of investment. I have friends that I believe they have them backwards, that are, hey, I'm going to get rich and then I'm going to give to a charity, right? And I'm like, the return on a human life is going to exceed your 8%, 10%, 12%, 15% life. Like, suffering is now, charity is now. And there's a whole section on charity is now. And so that I'm going to get rich at 105 and then go travel the world and do things, I know that's an extreme. They might have been doing things beforehand. They got it backwards. You have life backwards. It's suboptimal. If we can Monte Carlo your life like this was the Sims game, that character would get the lowest points, even though they have a nice $105 billion at 105 or whatever it is. Dr. Renna?
Yeah, I'm a true believer. I was so excited because you were the first person to ever echo what my thoughts were about that. And so I am the choir in your church. And I think that that's exactly right. Earlier I said you have to come to grips with the concept of mortality, but not just intellectually, but emotionally. You have to realize, okay, what they're talking about is true. Like, however good I feel today, I'm not going to have these same capabilities 25 years from now. So how do I conduct my life? How do I plan my life so that I get the most life points and the most experience points between here and 25 years from now? And if you're in that mindset, you'll continue doing that. So those experiences will continue being rich as you grow older and your physical abilities or intellectual and cognitive abilities decline. I think you have to do that. You have to plan for that. In terms of charity is what I said earlier. What's the best investment I ever made? It was in other people. Charity is the open-ended expression of that. In other words, when you give money to a charity, you're investing in people you're never going to meet and never going to know. In fact, you're giving the money, which is a currency of choices and power. You're giving choices and power to people you don't even understand how they're going to, how you're going to hand it off to them. All you know is, I'm going to do this. And the reason that we do that is because it's good for us to do that. It's not, one of the most dreaded complaints in terms of day in, day out, month in, month out, this is what I've been for years, is constipation. One of the most dreaded complaints in medicine is, I can't move, I can't get it out of me. And for me, not giving to charity all along is a form of sort of monetary or financial constipation. It stops you up. The first concept is mortality, that I think you came to grips with very early. The second concept, which makes you somewhat unique, is the self-confidence that you express in the book that you had even when you were on the trading floor. And that is, I'm going to make more money. The first realization that you talked about in the book is, I'm going to make more money than $16,000 a year. So why am I saving this $1,000? Yeah, exactly right. Your boss pointed it out to you, but you got the message and you never lost
loud
that
and clear.
But what that means is that you have the confidence in yourself to not think you're going to run out of money. And that's the second criteria, the second thing that people have to wake up to. None of us are going to run out of money. All of you guys out there, you're not going to run out of money. You're just going to make more money. And there'll be years when you make more than you expected, and there'll be years when you make less than expected. But on average, you're going to continue making more and more money until the point in your life where you say, you know what, I don't need any more money. In fact, I might have a surplus of money, and now I need to take time and convert it into experience instead of taking time and convert it into currency.
Scott, you want to bring up the next one? I'm pretty bad at clicking these buttons. That was great. From here on out, I'll just after both of you guys give your answer to, we've got 2 more questions that came in. You could just shift back to me, and I'll read through the questions and
go ahead,
select the best ones. for given the ones that we haven't really covered yet. Here's a good one. This one is from an anonymous attendee, and he writes, what can low-income people do to maximize their health and avoid what doctors are now calling, in quotes, shitty life syndrome, where people start abusing their health as a coping mechanism from lack of opportunity or quality or for a quality life? I guess why don't we kick this one off first to Dr. Renna, then
Yeah, this seems like much in a specialty. I have one comment on it, but I'll let Dr. Renna go first.
Yeah.
So I think I'm going to do this in what may seem a little bit of a backwards progression, but the one thing that we can do that will make us healthier that does not cost any money is to move. We can walk, and everybody can walk, and you can walk anywhere you want, with masks and 6-foot distance in today's world, but you can still walk from here to downtown Los Angeles, or from my other office to downtown Dallas, or downtown, we can walk. The basis of health, whether it's for a wealthy person or a non-wealthy person, is the mixture of diet, exercise, and sleep. And the modifier of those three behaviors is your perspective, or how you view yourself and your place in the world. That's the foundation of health. And that's what every sophisticated program focuses on as step one. If you're a low-income person, you may have difficulty buying the highest quality food. There's a specialty store in Los Angeles called Erewhon that is sort of the Uber Whole Foods. You can't buy lunch in Erewhon for less than $25 or $30. It's insane. I mean, you stand online like a grocery store and you get served like a cafeteria counter, and when you go to the checkout, it's $29. Like, what did I do? But that food is very high quality food. We've investigated the quality of their food and the sources of their food, and it's a very legitimate place. In other words, when they say, this tomato was picked yesterday in the San Fernando Valley, they're not kidding. Okay, so food is the fundamental variable, but low-income people may have difficulty buying the highest quality food. You still need to make an attempt to buy the best food possible. If you're in a regular supermarket and you see grass-fed versus, no sign or sticker in it, you have to weigh the value of 2 pounds of the no sign or sticker versus 1 pound of the higher quality food. So eating better is a bit of a challenge, but a fundamental step. But it doesn't cost anything to exercise, and it doesn't cost anything to go to bed an hour earlier. So getting enough sleep and exercising are free. It doesn't matter what your income is. In fact, I had the most difficult time with the affluent people getting them to go to bed or getting them to sleep in a normal and healthy cycle.
True story.
Yeah. So what I would do, if I were at the $16,000 a year point in my career, I would make sure that I was as fit as I could be. Did I do 200 push-ups today? And if not, let me bang out the rest. And how far did I walk? What do the steps say on my cell phone, which are free apps? And I would make sure that I got enough sleep. And if I were to spend money on something that I wasn't spending money on, or if I were to spend more money on something that I wasn't paying attention to, it would be the quality of my food.
Yeah, I would just add, going back into the first thing you would say, my comment was going to be like, where you think you are in relation to that, and kind of that scarcity mindset, that hopelessness, like, oh, I'm poor and therefore my choice is limited, so I'm doomed to be unhealthy, fat, and then go down this path. And I think that changing that mindset is extremely important, because I always say movement is life, not just also from a health standpoint, like walking keeps you healthy, but you take in food, you convert that energy, and you use that energy for movement, first to fire neurons in your brain, which then fire to your muscles to move you throughout the world and have the experiences that you want to have, right? And once you can no longer move, you're dead. That's it, right? And so the more you move, the more life you're getting. And so going back to walking and hiking, I've started to fall in love with, especially hiking. I've been walking since I lived in Manhattan. I used to love walking around the city. It's one of the few activities you can do where not only you are enjoying it, you can be walking with a friend, talking, having a discussion, just observing the world and the universe around you, but it's also giving you that positive feedback of it's making you healthier at the same time. It's increasing the future value of other experiences, right? And so, as Dr. Renna says, it's free to walk. I think that, that's one of my major recommendations is hiking, walking, grab a group of friends, go think of hobbies or places you can go and walk, hike.
Awesome. That takes care of that question. Yeah, you nailed it pretty quickly. I don't know why that sounded so profound. It's free to walk around. It's free to move. It's
and movement is life.
Yep.
Movement is life.
This next one ties in, I think, really nicely to that. So say, okay, I know I need to move, and I've come to that realization. This question is from Harvey Dillon, and he asks for Dr. Chris is, how do you actually approach this from a mindset? Do you think that daily consistency of new habits is more important? Like, I need to just move every day versus the mindset of thinking, my goal is to do this, 21 days out of the 30 days this month. Which mindset would you go with, or have you seen work best for your clients?
I think today is all we have. So, I can only measure my accomplishments on the basis of my thoughts, attitudes, and actions today. And I realize that long-term planning has enormous value. So I'm not saying that I'm a carpe diem guy, but I think that in terms of how much good can I do, both for myself and for the world, I've only got today to do it in. So if that goal is 200 push-ups, or if that goal is 10,000 steps, I can only do those push-ups or those steps today. I can't do them 21 out of every 30 days. I can only do them today. And I'm going to do them today. And I'm going to have the intention to do them again tomorrow, because I know that these types of things will make me a healthier and more functional guy. Before I move off the topic, I want to explain something, or give the viewer something to think about. Each of us exist in two realms. We exist in a somatic realm, which is our body. And there are certain things that our body depends upon for its workings. But that's not where we live most of the time. The second existence is in our self-concept. And our self-concept is actually an electrical hologram that's created by the inseparable interactions among hormones, immune system activities, and other physiologic factors, neurochemicals. That self-concept is where we've all been this morning, because none of us have a really painful leg, or none of us have gastroenteritis. We're all living in our self-concept, and that's where human beings want to live. They want to live in this big cloud of activity and ideas that they call themselves. And they will live there comfortably and expansively until their body compels them into their somatic realm. And usually what compels you back into the somatic realm is some kind of pain or dysfunction. If I had a bad stomach ache right now, I wouldn't be so philosophical. And that's why we have to take such good care of our bodies by eating well, sleeping, moving enough, and maintaining a healthy perspective, is so that it doesn't compel us back into this lower form, this corporeal form, that we can continue advancing our experiences, our ideas, our love, and our creativity without the encumbrance of that physical problem.
Interesting. Yeah. Bill, do you want to add anything to that?
I read a book called Tiny Habits by B.J. Fogg, and I actually took his boot camp on behavioral design. And the concept in that book is basically behavior is where motivation, ability, and a prompt converge. Okay. And the easier something is for you to do, the more likely you're going to do it, or the less motivation you need to do it. Right. And the idea is that you develop things that are easy for you to do, so that if your motivation is going up and down, okay, habits that advance you towards your goal. Okay. So I want to get healthy. Okay. What is something that's easy enough for me to do right now? Right. So you don't wake up out of shape and go, I'm going to run a mile every day. Right. Or 10,000 steps might even be too much. But what is something easy I can do? Walk down to the street and back. Right. That will advance my goal. I have the time, and then a prompt. Maybe it's a reminder on my phone. Hold on. A reminder on my phone. It's a reminder on a sticky on my note, et cetera, but a prompt, because no behavior happens without a prompt. Most of the time it's from that internal prompt, right? But those are kind of unreliable because your mind is going all kinds of places, but an external prompt is probably the most reliable. And to just do that every day, do that habit as frequently as possible until it becomes easy. And then you'll add on and add on and add on. Next thing you know, you're hiking a mountain or you're doing whatever. And so going back to that what Renna was saying about today is that today, design a behavior that's easy enough for you to do that takes you closer to your goal. So, in the beginning of this call, we make decisions every day that bring us closer to the grave or further away. They make our quality of life better or worse. And you can design habits that will bring you further away from the grave, make you healthier, and take you on a path to these eventual lofty goals of, I want to be 15% body fat, and I want to be able to hike the Himalayas, et cetera. And so that's the one thing I would add to that.
Yeah, fantastic. Before we move on to the next question, Dr. Renna, do you have, your response on, the self-concept? We kind of live in two worlds. It's kind of like mind and body, right? Physiological and the mind. You highlighted it and outlined it in a very, very unique way. I've never heard that before. Is that something, the self-concept, and is that something that you have just uncovered through your observation and analysis and practicing it every single day? Or is it something that you've read in a book? And if so, is there certain books that you would recommend to the viewers and to the attendees that if they were interested in what you outlined, they could check it out and read more about that?
Well, that's a great question, Scott, and it's a shortcoming of mine. In thinking about my answer, I realized that I really should make a book list of the experiences, the reading experiences that I've had that have opened my mind to it. As far as I know, the way I explain the somatic form and the self-concept is my own conclusions. And those conclusions came from a great deal of reading and also the experiences that I've had with my clientele. If you want to create a new paradigm, if you feel compelled to create a new paradigm, and you want that new paradigm to succeed, for example, Bill's book that we're talking about today, and that is getting everybody who's read the book and everybody who's a member of this interesting conversation to actually do what he's suggesting, to actually be more confident in your ability to continue earning more as you go on and spending money for life points, for experience points. You've got to really find it in yourself. You've got to explain it to yourself, and you've got to create a certainty about it. When I was thinking about how do you change a medical relationship, I came to these realizations that if I just tell the person, if I sit down and talk to the person like another person, not in that hierarchical relationship of doctor-patient, but if I sit down and talk to them like a regular person, and point out things to them that they already know but they haven't thought of or they haven't crystallized in their own mind, they'll be more likely to listen to the other sort of more boring advice, the more active advice, like you've got to change this. You've got to eliminate wheat, corn, dairy, and soy. Okay, what am I going to eat? If I eliminate wheat, corn, dairy, and soy, that's it. I don't have anything else to eat. Well, you know, that leaves chicken. Okay, you know, getting them to eliminate wheat, corn, and dairy and soy is a lot easier once you have told them something, once you've told another person something that they knew about themselves, but they really hadn't thought of, or they really hadn't seen in that way. And that explanation of how we exist and how we go through our life is the unconscious activities to which we're all bound. And pointing that out was helpful in terms of getting someone interested enough in what I was saying to maybe change their dietary behaviors, or to maybe add an additional exercise session per week.
Excellent. So we have, let's see, you know, I think the plan is to go until 9:30 a.m. So we only have time for probably 2 or 3 more questions. And therefore, for that reason, there's a lot of really good questions that have come in, some of which are more geared specifically towards you, Bill. And, you know, we've got the poker, you know, the poker faction that has come in that wants to learn a lot about your, you know, the probability thinking that seems ingrained in your engineering mind, and you know, trading strategies. But since we've got Dr. Renna here, I want to
let's stick with Dr. Renna while we have him, and then maybe we can do another one, and we'll write those down. Exactly. And we'll answer those on another one.
Yeah. So we're going to shift to and stick with just the health focused ones. And this one came in from another anonymous attendee. And this is an interesting one. It's a trend that is picked up, I would say, probably in the last, especially 5 years. Perhaps been going on longer than that. And he asks, Dr. Renna, what are your general thoughts on fasting? He says some new research says it helps with post-concussion syndrome. It helps with depression, fibromyalgia.
Fibromyalgia.
Zero idea what it is, what that is. But yeah, so why don't you give us your thoughts on fasting research and what your take is on it?
Sure. The medical literature on fasting, whether it's intermittent or prolonged in different intervals, is all very positive. I'm going to come back to fasting right away. I won't digress too far, but the basic idea is that our genes preserve our health and protect us from our own decisions until we're about 30. And when we're 30, in order to expand our adaptability in the event of some environmental change to which we were not accustomed, those regulatory genes turn off. When they turn off, you become the product of your choices. The choices you make either provoke your immune system into an inflammatory reaction, or they don't. There are 2 categories. This, you know, what I just did was inflammatory, what I just did was not inflammatory. All of us have probably done very few inflammatory things since we got on this call. And if we've done anything that was anti-inflammatory, it was probably take deeper breaths or drink water. So the reason that I point this out is that fasting is a highly anti-inflammatory activity. And the more you can reduce inflammation, the more physical function you'll preserve, and the healthier and longer you're going to live. So the key to living a long, healthy life, the key to having more fitness and more abilities, is to reduce inflammation. Inflammation is your immune system's universal response to imbalances, most of which you create. So if you can understand what behaviors I'm doing that are creating inflammatory reactions and which ones I'm not, you know, which ones are anti-inflammatory. For example, sleep is anti-inflammatory and exercise is anti-inflammatory. Eating can either be inflammatory or neutral, It really can't be anti-inflammatory. Fasting is anti-inflammatory. So intermittent fasting means eating all your food within 8 hours a day. Very strong data about intermittent fasting. There was a program that was created at USC by a researcher there, very well-respected guy by the name of Walter Longo. And Walter created this idea of the Prolon, P-R-O-L-O-N, fasting mimicking diet. For the last 40 years, it's been noted that people who fast or eat fewer calories preserve functionality and live longer than people who eat more calories. So there's a whole group, a sect of people who've been eating about 650 calories, which is roughly one meal per day for the last 30 years. And they measure, we haven't measured their biologic age because we just developed those tools in the last year or two, but we've measured their functionality and they remain highly functional people long into their lives. Why? Because they ate very little. Well, why did eating very little help them become healthier or preserve their health? It's because most of the food choices that we make in our casual, uninformed life are inflammatory choices. And so we don't know what foods to eat or not to eat. So we're eating foods that cause us excess inflammation every day.
Yeah, and you know, one of the interesting things as part of my checkup going in is discovering what foods provoked an inflammatory response in myself and which didn't, you know, which were very strong inflammatory, kind of inflammatory, and ones were okay. And it really sucks when something you really love is in the inflammatory category, I got to tell you. So you really need to work on your mind and getting that out and developing the habit to replace it with these other foods. But yeah.
Intermittent fasting, prolonged fasting mimicking, and water fasting can be done very well. They can be very healthy and they can be done intermittently. So that you fast 1 day a week, or that you fast 5 days a month, or 3 days a month, or 2 days a month. Again, you know, it's what Bill said about small things you can do. So if you can't imagine not eating for 16 hours a day, then just push how long it takes for you to eat your first food by 1 hour. And then after a week, push it by 2 hours. You know, see what you can do. Most of us will find out that when we first awaken, we need some sort of rehydration, but we don't really need food. We're working on a ketone-based energy cycle at that time, and ketones are derived from the fat that we've already stored. So unless we're already quite lean, most of us can do intermittent fasting effectively. But to answer the person's question, intermittent fasting gets a thumbs up.
And before we move on, Bill, have you had any experiences, and what's your experience been like if you've tried to implement intermittent fasting in your life, or if you try to do a day or two? You know, like I've gone through a cycle and phase of getting really inspired, and there's
it's funny.
What's your experience?
My experience is I think intermittent fasting is a little tougher for me because I have enough distractions in my life to do that. But what I do is 4-day fast at least twice a year. I pick out 4 days. I time it. I plan it. I time it. I'm like, okay, I got nothing going on this day. I might be a little cranky on day 2 because of the hunger pains. You know, it's psychological, etc. So I'll do a 4-day fast. And the reason why is that I was told by another doctor that a long time ago that it resets your immune system. And you want to get to day 4. I assume intermittent fasting does it. I'm not a fasting expert, Dr. Renna is, or the other fasting gods are. But the one thing I do notice is that I have allergies. And I am a bad boy. I do eat inflammatory foods, even though it's on the list of don't eat, right? And so, but when I do this, and so that a consequence of that is my left nasal cavity is always clogged. Like it is constantly clogged, right? And I can go have that bowl of cereal that has the oats and the nuts and the thing and whatever, and then, I know my nose is going to be clogged all day, and I'm going to have a response to the oat. When I fast, clear. By day 3, clear. By day 4, clear. So I do it to reset my immune system. I'm obviously at my weight, I'm at a 2000, that's roughly a 2,300 calorie deficit for me. So I'm losing about 1.33 pounds every day, every 2 days. So, I lose 2 pounds, not really losing that much muscle tissue. I'm resetting my immune system. And psychologically, I feel like, oh, I did what the doctor told me. You know what I mean? I feel good. I feel good about myself. And it actually spurs me to do other things because I've just accomplished that quest, of fasting. I'm like, now I'm going to go on a 4-mile hike or a 5-mile hike, or I'm going to go lift weights. I'm going to do whatever. So it even has these psychological effects that boost me up because I feel accomplished after going through that. So that's my experience.
Yeah, awesome. We'll end with this last question, and then we can, if there's any other questions, Bill, that you have.
Yeah, I'll stay on for a little bit. That I don't want to keep Dr. Renner. There's people out there who want to live long and live a healthy life, and I don't want to keep them from having those people live long and have a healthy life. But I will stay a little bit longer to answer questions for me. So why don't we give the next question that's more geared toward Dr. Renner?
Yeah. We'll stay on. Let's plan maybe like 15 minutes after Dr. Renna checks out to go continue to add value to people's lives and allow that, like, literally in terms of value being years that they actually live on this planet
in higher quality.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So this one is a question from Talewa, and he or she, I'm not sure, is coming at this question from really how can they be more productive, but from not just your giving the self-development type of advice, but from health and longevity advice. So her question is, I'd love to know what you think are the key guideposts required to changing your mindset and becoming more productive. And by guideposts, she means like what health habits or guideposts are almost like the cheat sheet or hack to become more productive as fast as possible.
Productivity. So, productivity might be defined differently in different settings. But while you were describing the question, I was thinking that, the first thing that a person has to do to initiate change is to be curious. And the second thing is to obtain different information than they already have. And the third thing, as Bill pointed out, is to make small goals in terms of implementing that new information. And the thing that probably inspires people the most to make those changes with regard to their health or any other behaviors that they want to improve is talking about it to others. So, we've all had those conversations where one of our friends has gotten onto a new idea or read a new book, like Die with Zero, and can't wait to tell us about it, and that's all they can talk about. That actually is a positive way of reinforcing the behaviors, encouraging yourself to do those things. So I would say that to be more productive from a health standpoint, you have to be curious and you have to want the information. Then you have to seek and find the information, which is a challenge that we could take up perhaps at another session in terms of sorting information, good information from bad. And then you've got to create a goal for changing your behavior. 10 push-ups a day would be a good start, or 1,000 steps a day would be a good start. And then building upon the success of that. I hope I got close to answering the question that Talewa was asking.
Yeah, I think you did. And especially with the all the other subject matter in the area that we've already dived into. There's been a number of gems that people.
I have something to add to that.
Okay.
At least for me, right? I don't know if it's the way, and it's just probably an execution of that model, of that idea. One of the fastest ways that I've seen people make changes or is an accountability group. And one of the ways that I'm kind of famous for is accountability is a wager, right? I bet you can't do this, whatever. They have money in line. So that wager is really a form of accountability, right? And so I myself right now, starting tomorrow, have a 4-day-a-week, 1-hour workout, whatever it's going to be, is bet with my other friends. And if you don't do it, it's $100 per non-workout. And you also have to wear a crop top for a day. So the $100 is not that big deal to me, whatever. But what I'm doing is I'm forming an accountability group, right? I have this wager that I'm worried about, and I have these other people who are watching me and talking with me, and they're on the other side. So it's really a hack. I'm hacking my psychology, my brain, about I don't want to lose, I don't want to wear a crop top, and I got my friends, etc. And so I think, to me, that has I've seen people do miraculous transformations when a wager or some sort of accountability group is on the line. So if you have friends or other people, perhaps you can design some sort of accountability group, even if it's a small wager or an embarrassing thing, like, hey, if you don't do those 1,000 steps today, you got to wear a crop top or hair, whatever it is. You will actually start doing these things. The motivation goes higher. I'm hacking the motivation while also making it easier for me to do. And the accountability group is constantly prompting you. You need a prompt. No behavior happens without a prompt. And I think that is a wonderful way to get you on your way quickly.
Excellent.
I want to thank you guys for this opportunity and for all of the contributing questions. I really do wish I could stay on another hour. And, if I'm sincere about that, maybe we could reschedule again. But thank you guys. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Dr. Renna. Thanks for coming.
Stay well.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dr. Renna.
So guys, I have we'll do it another 12 minutes. So we'll get a couple questions in. Scott, you want to fire away?
You still there? Okay, cool. Yeah, so there's some, that was awesome having Dr. Renna. And, it's interesting, these our show up rate, like I'm used to doing webinars where, there's, I've done them before where there's, 1,000 people that have shown up for, like the XYO in cryptocurrency, right?
Right.
But I know with the stats, you usually end up with maybe 30%, at the end of it, right? End of an hour. It has been insane. Like the attendees, we've had like 11 attendees. Right now we have 10. People are sticking around. Which is pretty insane. We started with our diehard group. And so
yeah, well, I mean, listen, if you could just hear it, in every single answer he gives, you're getting a ton of value. And, I pay a lot of money to be able to spend a lot of time and have him ask and answer questions and have a relationship with me so that I have a better quality of life and hopefully a longer life if these concepts permeate my brain and I actually follow through with them. So, to have him on for an hour and get that juice, you know what I mean, is I think you'd be silly to leave unless you had something else pressing or going on.
I didn't even mention it to the attendees, yet, but he's the type of like you mentioned in your book, the LA Santa Monica type of doctor where usually just to even get his time or thoughts, it's like $25,000 upfront type of.
Well, what they do is in the model, he talked about how, the paradigm of, your disease is my annuity. I got 5 minutes, I diagnose it, and I give you the therapeutic and you go. That's not their model.
Yeah.
But they have a lot fewer clients and they have to fill in that, you're paying for that access. But anyway, people don't want to hear us blather about Dr. Renna. What you don't want to answer questions.
Let's jump into this. So here's I think this one, we'll start with this one. There is, this is from Jonathan Johnson. He writes, in your book, you talk about converting life energy and money into experiences. He says, I'm thinking that you want to accumulate as much money as fast as possible to then convert that money into experiences as soon as possible. But what he's stuck at and what he wants to know is, how did you earn your money as fast as possible? Like, what is your trading strategy? How did you learn the trading strategy? You know, the unique way that you've made your money, Bill, is by, you know, leveraging capital, which is probably
Trading
one of the
commodities,
best
yeah.
ways to make money, because
Yeah,
you know, it's not just spending.
I get asked this a lot of questions, and I kind of give like the high concept level. And the way I made money is I had access to leverage and I was right. So if you have access to leverage, you know, and you're right, you're going to make a lot of money. Whether you open up 1,000 pizza parlors on loan and investors and you're levered up, or you're trading commodities. And one of the most common ways, like why you always hear these pitches late night on TV, the real estate game or whatever, that is one of the few areas where the average person can get leverage, right? And a first-time home buyer can get fantastic leverage. In New Jersey, I think it's all the way down, only 2.5% down, right? It's like 5, but then there's another program where they loan you the other part of the deposit or whatever. And you can control this asset that's worth $100,000 in value for $2,500 down, right? So I got $2,500, I buy a house. That house moves 10%. Okay, it's moved $10,000. I've made 4 to 1 on my money, right? And that's the game, right? In the real estate game, right? Is lever up or rent it out or whatever it is. One of the places with inherent standardized leverage is commodity trading, the futures contracts, right? The margin required to trade a futures contract is a fraction of the value of the contract, right? Depending on how and stocks, they usually, a retail customer could probably get 2 to 1 leverage, right? They can put 50% down and control twice as many stocks, right? And then you got to be right. So I went into the field of energy commodities trading, leverage and volatility, which means when I'm right, it moves a lot, right? And there's leverage, I make a lot of money, right? And then there's another form of leverage I got. When you're a trader, right, for a firm, when you first start out and you go work for a firm, and you don't work for a bank, but you know, banks do pay, you get a percent of what you make. Mm-hmm. I'm like, wait a minute, this is a form of infinite leverage. They pay me a salary. They're going to give me a percentage of what I make. And if I blow up, okay, mm-hmm. I don't have any, you know what I mean? I still got my salary, right? I get fired, right? I'm out on the street, I'm waiting tables, but I have the power of the bank and their leverage, and I make a percent, right? Or the trading shop, right? Subject to the constraints of how much they will actually let you put you on. Mm-hmm. And so it wasn't like I was 17. It's like, I love commodities trading, or I love X. I realized that the money was a path to the experiences I wanted to have. And therefore, I wanted to go down a path that could pile on those experiences. And the leverage afforded in commodities trading fit the bill. And then that's how I made money. When people say, what was my trading style? That's very... my trading style is a fundamental trader, which means I analyze all the information to arrive at what where supply and demand meet and where the fair value of the price is. And if it is below that, I am a buyer. And if it is above that, I am a seller, I go short. So I have a fundamental trading strategy. That's it.
Yeah. And basically, because you are confident in the methods that you have used to make the decision, whether it be right or wrong, it was the right decision because you knew how the model worked. You know that basically sometimes it's going to be right, sometimes it's going to be wrong. Is that why? Because like with leverage, you can be wrong.
You can go horribly wrong. You can go horribly wrong. So you have to have some liquidity to be able to get out. You have to be able to admit when you get out. You're going to have money management, bankroll management, the same things that poker players use, et cetera, right? There is variance, and you have to be long and overrun. At the end of the day, I'm not a trader, I'm an insurance agent, okay? I trade in a market where there are people who are drilling wells and the stuff comes out of the ground ratably over 5 years, and they want to hedge, and they sell, right? And they have to sell at a price that you're willing to buy, that you think there's some sort of value, right? So I act as an insurance agent on prices going down. There are utilities who like have to buy gas for the winter. Their sole job is not price management, it is reliability, right? Every single utility doesn't give, I'm going to curse, doesn't give a fuck what price they pay. That's a pass-through. They care about reliability. Their job is to make sure grandma does not die in the cold winter, right? And so they will buy firm contracts as hedges, right? And I get induced to sell it. And I act as an insurance agent if prices going higher or gas running out, et cetera, right? And so I'm an insurance agent.
Yeah.
Right? I'm an insurance agent. I'm not a trader, I'm an insurance agent, right? It's in a market-based product, but I'm really an insurance agent.
Yeah.
Of leverage products.
Awesome. Yeah. And, there was two gems in there, what you just said. And I think what people need to also pay attention to and realize is it's kind of what I went through as well is you learned on someone else's dime while also protecting your downside, and then that allowed you to master your craft, master the field so that you could actually be confident in using your own money, your own leverage, and, breaking off on your own.
Yeah, I was pretty arrogant and delusional. But when I went to work for Johnny, when he was like, "Hey, you want to work with me?" I was like, I'm doing all this other stuff on the side. I don't want to work for you, but I just want a percent deal. You don't even have to pay me a salary. I don't give a shit about the salary. I just want the highest percent you can pay me, right? And then I realized like the unlimited upside of the percent, right? Like that you're getting there. And there's certain salespeople out there that like guys like wait, real estate agents, same thing. Like they eat what they close, right? They get 3%, or the firm gets 6%, but they get 2 to 3 or whatever. And they're like, I'm going to sell $1 trillion worth of houses. And, they're levered up, right? What's their risk? Nothing. They do nothing. They get 0 that year. They don't sell a house, but they have a percentage upside for everything to sell. And so those levered positions are where, you're going to make an outsized return. If you're an hourly person and you're just selling your time and somebody's going to give you hourly, ultimately you're capped, right? Even if you're a $500, $600,000, $2,000 an hour attorney, right? You're capped. There's only so many hours in a day. If you're a percent guy on a financial product or housing, you can close a lot of houses. You can hire a lot of minions to fill out paperwork and be closing for you and rake in a percent. And so that's where, the type of wealth that I wanted to have, because I had these eyes this big and I thought I had all these experiences I wanted to have. That's the field I went into. It's not necessary to have a happy and fulfilling life, but it's what I did.
Awesome. The next question let's dive into is one based on probability. He writes, Bill, you seem to be a probability-based thinker. Is that an attribute that came more from your trading career, or did it come more from your poker career? And how does one become a better probability-minded person in terms of decision making?
Oh, wow. I think it came from trading and poker. It's really, I started learning about options, and it was all about probability distributions and distribution functions, et cetera. And I think viscerally, I think even in college, I started to think about it. When I stopped eating meat, right? I read this book that was half propaganda about treat the animals kind, and half about like the health risks, right? And it would be like your risk of a heart attack, your risk of colon cancer, your risk of all these other things going in. Whether it's true or not is not the point. That's not what I'm trying to push it. The point is I said to myself, in which I was a adamant, belligerent meat eater, arguing with my girlfriend who was a vegan. But I said to myself, I was like, really, I don't really give a fuck about meat. And I take a lot of risks. Like a lot of risks. Like I was running around campus sleeping with girls without a condom. I was doing stupid shit, right? that was the amount of risks I was taking. I get, I'd get fights and stupid shit like that, right? Like, and I was like, in my life, I'm going to take a lot of risks. I don't care enough about meat to take the colon cancer risk, right? To me, it was just like, oh my God, like I don't want to wake up at 40 or 35 or 50 or whatever and like have colon cancer. Like it's just not worth it. And that was like kind of that, we think about things in the abstract, but that was kind of like a visceral connection, me dying, et cetera. And so I had a motorcycle. I used to ride a motorcycle all the time. And, the odds of dying in a year of riding a motorcycle is like 1 in 10,000. I used to take flying lessons. I have 200 and something 30 hours flying, right? And you know, motorcycle and private flying, not in terms of like general aviation, it's about the same risk, right? The guy in a Cessna 172R, he's got the same risk as a guy flying a motorcycle. And I had a kid, and I was like, I don't have the right to take a 1 in 10,000 risk of dying. You know, so these little posts, right, got me thinking about risk, right? And then, you know, you go to, if you, as an exercise you can do also, like, what are the odds of you winning in blackjack after 500 hands, 1,000 hands, and 10,000 hands, right? And their edge is like 0.6%, whatever. We'll call 0.6. You can run this exercise. You can actually Google it. It goes in, you run the stat test or whatever. And as the more hands you play, the odds of you being a winner after those hands go drastically down. You know, you find out what it is, you run the difference, you do the formula, you look up on the ZSAT test, and it shows you the probability. And I was like, shit, that's life. Everything you do, like you do so many things a bunch of times, right? And they have a certain probability of you're going to die, right? And you want to minimize that, right? These negative, what we poker community call them negative free rolls. You want to minimize these things. And I just started thinking about these things in terms of risk reward. Now, there are certain things that I still do. They even be like, Bill, but you have a 1 in 5,000 chance of dying, but it's because the reward is so high.
Yeah, expect
right.
About.
And so I'm like, look, if I'm going to live, you know, if you're optimizing being the house in blackjack, you know, or on the other side, et cetera, and you're looking at these odds, like you want to just stack the odds in your favor. And I just looked at like, look, I want to stack the life odds in my favor. And the only time I want to like get into that risky shit is when it's a really big reward, you know,
Yeah.
and that's to every individual. Like, you know, skydiving, I went skydiving twice, won't go again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Because the thrill is gone. I did it, right? Like I don't need to go, right? Like it's like the risk is still the same and the reward is diminished. So my skydiving days are over, right?
Yeah, and also I think what I've taken from your book, and I think a lot of people will take from it, is if you look at your life and say, you know, how can I have the most fulfilling life, you know, possible? A life in which you've at least skydived once is much more fulfilling than one in which you've done it 0 times because you were afraid of the probability, right? The payout and reward is, but you know, it depends on the person. But
it depends on the person. But yeah, that's the way I thought about it. It's like one time I'm going to do it. I think, you know, I'll take this risk. I will have a very fulfilling life. I will get a lot of memory dividends off of telling a story when I went skydiving and how I had a hard on for 2 weeks afterwards and all this other kind of stuff. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, the memory dividends paying itself right now. You know, it's like a hilarious experience, you know, adding laughter, joy to life.
Yeah.
You know, so it's just compounds. All right, next question. This is one that I feel like you've definitely specialized in and learned a lot about recently. This is about experiences. And this person writes, this is from Omar. He writes, question for Bill. You've experienced a lot of incredible things in life. What experiences have been the best bang for your buck? Let's go with you know, one up to 3. You know, best bang for your buck experiences.
Yeah, I can easily. The best bang for my buck experiences have been hikes with friends. So when I hiked Aspen Mountain, which fucking killed me, right? David Goggins, the super goat of all athletes, you know, of endurance athletes, you know, he's running in the morning. And I said, listen, I just want to take a leisurely hike up there. I haven't, you know, I'm sick of the altitude, whatever. And we walked up there, and I at sometimes hated that hike, but I had joy and I really enjoyed it and I had an experience with friends and whatever, or hiking the Ute or hiking trails in Runyon Canyon. You know, I'm with friends, I'm hiking, I'm getting exercise, I'm seeing beautiful nature, I'm absorbing. That is like, the buck was 0. The bang was huge, right? So that's in the infinite category. The intermediate category where you're like spending some money would be the road trip up the coast of California on the Highway 101. Larry and I, to celebrate our 4th anniversary, we said we're going to drive from LA up to the Redwoods and go see the Redwoods, right? So got in the car, started driving, you know, and we stayed overnight. We could have slept in the car, but we stayed overnight in some places and drove and went up to Redwoods, went around, marveled at the Redwoods, took pictures, and then came back, you know, and celebrated our 4 years of being together. I mean, that was huge bang for the buck. And then, you know, the rest would just be travel and trips, you know. For other people, it might be something else or whatever, but traveling, meeting people, helping people in areas you meet, understanding other people's problems, ambitions, dreams, cultures, cracking open your head, going to Thailand and seeing how happy those people were, even though they were very poor. I was like, how the fuck are these people are way happier than me? They're not just a little bit happier, they're way happier than me. They don't have any, you know, they don't have anything in an economic sense relative to me, you know? And so those trips and experiences, traveling, were by far the best bang for your buck.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's it. I think we've nailed every single one. There's some that I'll follow up with that I can write down afterwards, but we've nailed, I think, every single question.
Okay.
So, well, thanks for putting this and.
I want to thank everybody for showing up, taking time out of their busy day to listen to me blather, listen to Chris Renna. I want to thank everybody who's bought the book and hopefully have read it, but eventually read it. And if whether you liked it or not, hopefully you liked it and you got value. Please give a review on Amazon if you bought it on Amazon, or a review wherever. If you got the audiobook, please. I think audiobooks now give you a review. I know you might hate my voice. I don't like my own voice, but give a review. I appreciate it, and thank you for your time. And hopefully we'll be able to do another one.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Bill, so much. And every single person still on this call, all of our attendees, you can thank Bill for by leaving a review on Amazon. It's I think we have like 34 reviews last time I checked. It's like 5 stars. It's growing up the list. This thing is like, it's catching on like wildfire. It's going to be growing.
It's a movement.
This is a it's a movement.
It's a movement. A lot of people are like, oh, why'd you write the book? It's like to get the word out. Like the book is like, I'll tell everybody. Like I think I get 10% of the book when they sell it, and they always discount it or whatever. And then you can't really sell that many books, And so I'm not getting rich off this book. The whole idea is to create a movement on people modeling their life, to get off autopilot, to think about their life from now to the grave, modeling it and get the most out of life. Okay. And so the more you're enthusiastic, you leave a review, get the word out, the more people will be off autopilot, modeling on life and having a better adventure than they otherwise would. And that's charitable, actually.